In the small town of Ravenbrook, surrounded by dense forests and streets that always seemed damp with fog, lived Clara Moreau, a 32-year-old literature teacher. Clara led a quiet, predictable life in her downtown apartment until the day she received unexpected news. The death of her grandmother, Elizabeth Moreau, an enigmatic woman who had spent nearly her entire life in seclusion inside an old, decaying house on the very edge of town. Although she had never been particularly close to her grandmother, Clara was informed that she had inherited the property, an imposing dark wood house with a reputation as mysterious as the woman who had lived within its walls. Some neighbors claimed they had heard Elizabeth talking to herself at night. Others swore they had seen lights flickering in the basement at impossible hours, determined to sort through her grandmother's belongings and decide the fate of the inheritance. Clara traveled to the house on a gray, overcast afternoon. As she pushed open the rusted iron gate, a chill ran up her spine. The garden was overrun with weeds, and the dust-covered windows stared back at her like silent, unblinking eyes. As she stepped inside, Clara found furniture draped in white sheets like motionless ghosts frozen in time. The air carried the scent of damp wood and long-forgotten memories. She wandered through the narrow halls, trying to imagine the solitude her grandmother must have endured within these walls. But it was only when she descended into the basement for the first time that something made her stop abruptly. An old wooden box, coated in layers of dust, rested beside a collapsed bookshelf. Inside, dozens of cassette tapes were neatly labeled with dates reaching back decades. Curious, Clara picked one up. On its label, written in faded ink, were the words, Case 12, Voices in the Forest. With trembling hands, she carried the tape to an old recorder sitting on the table. When she pressed play, the initial static gave way to a deep male voice, calm, steady, and disturbingly close. If you're hearing this, it means you already know too much. Clara's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just a memory captured on tape. It was a warning. Clara's heart pounded in her chest. That voice, deep and enigmatic, echoed through the basement as if it didn't belong only to the tape. She turned up the volume and kept listening. Case number 12 was never closed. They thought they had buried the truth, but the truth always finds a way to speak. Clara swallowed hard. The recording felt less like evidence and more like a diary, or perhaps a confession. But whose voice was it? And why would her grandmother keep something like this hidden? Driven by curiosity, she spent the night listening to more recordings. Each tape detailed crimes that had shaken the town decades earlier. Disappearances, unexplained deaths, buried secrets. The most unsettling detail was the way the narrator spoke, as if he had been there, as if he had seen it all, or taken part in it. Exhausted, Clara sank into the basement armchair, trying to gather her thoughts. That was when the sound of soft footsteps echoed from the floor above. Her heart skipped a beat. The house was supposed to be empty, or at least it should have been. "Is someone there?" she asked, her voice trembling. Silence. Only the creak of the old wooden boards overhead. Determined to face her fear, Clara climbed the stairs slowly, each step groaning beneath her weight. In the dark hallway, she felt a presence. The faint scent of old tobacco lingered in the air, a smell that reminded her of her grandmother's clothes. Suddenly, she noticed a shadow cast across the wall, tall, motionless, watching. "Who are you?" she whispered, struggling to keep her voice steady. No answer, only the sound of the wind pressing against the windows. When she switched on her phone's flashlight, the shadow was already gone. Back in the basement, she noticed something unsettling. The tapes were no longer in the same order, as if someone had gone through them while she was away. On top of the pile lay a new tape marked with a red label. Written on it were just a few words: "Clara, play last." Her hands began to shake. How could that tape have her name on it, if it seemed to have been recorded years ago? Clara realized she wasn't just uncovering old crimes. She was stepping into a game far more personal and far more dangerous. Clara stared at the tape with the red label. Her name written on it felt like a silent threat. With cold hands and a racing heart, she placed it into the recorder and pressed play. The initial static was followed by the same deep voice she had heard before. But this time, the words were far more disturbing. "Clara, if you come this far, it means the truth is already at your door. You've always been a part of this, even without knowing. This story is yours." She covered her mouth, unable to believe what she was hearing. How could her name have appeared on tapes recorded decades earlier? The recording went on, unveiling a secret buried for years. Elizabeth, her grandmother, had not been just a reclusive old woman. She had been the keeper of these tapes, records made by a man who investigated and confessed to unsolved crimes in Ravenbrook. Crimes committed by someone close to the Moreau family. "The bloodline carries its sins, Clara. Your mother tried to run, but she couldn't. Now it's you who must decide: continue the legacy or bury it forever." A heavy silence filled the basement. Tears slid down Clara's face. The voice seemed to know her most private life, things no one should have ever known. Suddenly, a sharp creak came from upstairs. More footsteps. She wasn't alone. Clara switched off the recorder and froze. The tapes seemed to pulse, as if the house itself were breathing with her. The last words of the recording echoed in her mind. "When you play this tape, look behind you." Clara spun around instantly. The darkness of the basement closed in on her, but for a fleeting moment, she swore she saw a figure standing in the shadows, watching. She bolted, racing up the stairs in a panic, clutching only the red tape. As she burst out of the house, the cold wind cut across her face, but the feeling of being followed never left her. As Clara ran out of a house, clutching the red tape against her chest, she felt a strange weight on her clothes. In the pale light of the street lamp, she froze. Her blouse bore fresh handprints smeared with dirt, as if someone had grabbed her only moments before. Her eyes darted back to the house. It no longer looked abandoned. Faint lights flickered in the basement windows, and dark silhouettes shifted restlessly behind the curtains, as if the house had suddenly come alive. The chilling realization hit her. This wasn't just her grandmother's secret. The tapes weren't relics of the past. They were evidence, pieces of an ongoing conspiracy that someone, somewhere, was still determined to protect. Clara's breath came in sharp bursts. She hadn't just inherited the house. She had inherited the burden, a role passed down through blood, chosen long before she ever stepped foot inside Ravenbrook's decaying shadows. And now, whether she wanted it or not, she was part of the story.